everyone, and welcome back. Today, we've been doing a lot on tillage. Today I'm going to try to explain the whole tillage process in this video. The way we do it, the way I do it. And I'm going to explain to you the steps we use, what each implement's used for, why we use it, and the order, and basically explain everything as we go. When we till, we use three implements primarily. Occasionally we will use a fourth, which I'll talk about later. Those three implements being moorboard plows, turning plows, bottom plows, all matter of things. A field cultivator, ripper, all-purpose plow, whatever. Once again, they come by a myriad of names, but this implement. And then of course we use the set of disc. Okay, now first thing we do is moorboard bottom or turn plow the ground. And what it does is it pulls, you're running 7-8 inches deep, and it flips the ground over. And what that does is, number one, it loosens the ground. Number two, it incorporates all the organic matter, crop residue, cover crop, and all those things down into the root zone, so it can start decaying, breaking down, and adding organic matter, etc., etc. It also helps with weed control by throwing some of them weed seeds down if you have weed residue as well. It helps and it hurts, but that's the purpose. Once we run through the field with this, we have a pretty rough, broken up, plowed piece of ground. It is not suitable at that point for a seed bed. This implement alone will not do a proper job of tillage and preparation for a seed bed. In other words, you can't use this alone. You have to use other implements or other techniques to prepare the final seed bed. That's what we use that for. That's its purpose. Once we have the field plowed, and of course that's one pass over. We go over it one time with that. Once we have the field plowed, we use the disc, okay? And what we do with this, its purpose is to reduce the size. It cuts. Its purpose is to cut, slice, to reduce the size of the soil particles and any of that crop residue, cover crop residue, weed residue, trash, whatever, to chop it down into smaller sizes. And what we do here, we will go over the field one time with a pretty aggressive setting. In other words, it's cutting deeper, it's cutting bigger chunks up, and that's just to smooth the field out and get it kind of leveled, smoothed out. And then we will set the disc to a less aggressive setting and run over it to smooth it and to cut the particles on down to a finer consistency. Now, that's the issue. That's what we use this for. This is step 2. In some ground, in some fields, you could probably get by just disking it and preparing a seed bed. Most of our ground you can't, so therefore we plow it before we disc it. So this does a better job in the plowed ground than if it's a non-plowed ground. Issues with this in our soil: number one, it doesn't go all that deep. you know, 5-6 inches deep is about as deep as it'll run. Second issue is compaction, and we can develop a hard pan by just using this. And we'll talk about a hard pan more in the upcoming videos, but a hard pan basically is where you have a loose layer of soil, thin loose layer of soil on top, and underneath it you have a compacted subsoil or a sublayer to your soil that prohibits water from penetrating and also can prevent roots from penetrating. So that's the disc. That is step 2. We typically go over a field twice. Now if it's got a lot of residue in it, if it's got a lot of thick heavy cover crop or something that really needs to be chopped up, we may go over this again. And at this point in some fields we may step in with another implement known as a rototiller. We're going to do a whole video on that later, so stay tuned for that. But the disc, it can be used in one step in some situations. It works better if it's not. Now it also, once you disc it, you could theoretically go ahead into a seed bed. You can reduce it down in the soils and stuff if you're lucky enough, and then basically reduce it from 3 steps to 2 steps by turning plowing, moorboard plowing, then disking, and then seeding or laying down plastic mulch or whatever. It will work. It doesn't work as good. So once we get done with this, we move on to the all-purpose plow, field cultivator, spring tooth, ripper, whatever. Everybody calls these things something different. So we've plowed, we've disked, and now we're going to final prep. And what this does is just rip the soil up. That's all it does. It breaks the compaction, and you know, you can see we can run 10-12 inches deep. That addresses the hard pan. And it also just really loosens the soil. And there's a reason I want to really loosen it up at this point. Now, we have got a drag, a log or whatever behind it. And all that does is smooth the soil out. Alright? So what we do, once we've disked it, we'll run this over, run it deep, and then we'll incorporate our broadcast fertilizer. Or we'll broadcast our fertilizer, granular fertilizer. And then we will run over the field again with this, and we will only go 7 or 8 inches deep, and that incorporates our fertilizer in. At that point, we are ready to either direct seed or put down our plastic mulch for our transplants and any of our vegetable crops. Now, once again, you can follow the turning plows with this in some situations and skip the disc. In some situations you can just use this plow to prepare the seed bed, depending on soil type and what residue and stuff you have left over. This, you know, like I said, it's really good at breaking and loosening the soil up. Now, why do we want to do that? When we finish with this tool, we're going to be running tractors back over it, putting down plastic mulch, pulling a planter, a seeder, or something along those lines, and we're going to start compacting that soil again. If we have that soil really loose with this implement, then our compaction for our crop will be lessened. 2 times with this, 1 time with that, and 1 time with the disc. That's the way we do it. That's the method we've used. And what I found is, in our soil conditions, in our growing environment here, if we do those 3 steps, we can prepare any type of ground that we have with the best possible seed bed, just best possible seed bed, and we get the best crop out of that. Now, we're a small farm. That's 5 trips over a piece of ground, okay? That's before we plant it. That's not counting broadcasting fertilizer. You know, that's just 5 trips tillage. So if I've got 25 acres in tillage, basically I'm tilling 125 acres, if you want to look at it that way. But I do know that they are modern pieces of equipment that have different components of these 3 implements in one, so it's more of a single pass operation. Larger operations, your BT equipment, I don't know what all they call them, but they're out there. But for our small operation, our vegetable operation, that is and our soils, that is the 3 techniques we use for preparing. Like I said, on occasion we'll use a rototiller, and we'll talk more about a rototiller later. We'll do a whole video on that. Rototiller can be a really good implement, and it can be a really destructive implement. So like the moldboard plows, if used properly and limited when it's needed, it's a very good implement. Overused or used improperly, it's a very bad implement, and that can be said for most implements. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, at some point, hopefully within the next 30 to 45 days, we'll quit talking about these and put them in the field. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll know when we put up a video. If you see a video you like, give it a thumbs up. If you have a question or a comment, please do so. And until next time, everybody take care of yourself.